It's an interesting question in terms of the trajectory for becoming a poet, because there's no blueprint for it and there's no plan. I didn't know at 10, which is when I first started to write poetry, that my career was going to take this trajectory. And I think I would have quite marvelled at the age of 10 when I was responding to a school poetry competition that my brilliant primary school teacher had the wisdom of setting up, and I ended up winning that poetry competition. I ended up reading the poem on the local news, and it was a moment where I thought, this is what I want to do with my life. I think that being a poet is akin to being a tradesperson. It's the maker, the maker. And you serve your apprenticeship, it's a craft, and we are in one of the major houses that is a poet's workplace, and that's the library. I think that being a playwright, being a librettist, being a narrativist, being a poet, they're all connected, because the thing that connects all of those things is the voice. And I guess the thing that underpins all of my work is polyphony, this idea of multiple voices, that we don't just have one voice as creatives, we have many voices, and that a lifetime should allow us to access many voices. So I'm not just writing from, within our lifetimes. We won't just have the voice of our 10-year-old selves or our 20-year-old selves or 30 or 40-year-old selves, but we will, being writers who are inquisitive about character and, well, we pursue characters, we will explore other interiorities and other realities and other ways of existing and being in the world. And that's just a magical thing, to get inside somebody's head or somebody's imagined head and try and write from that vantage point or positionality or place. It's how you see the world from a different perspective. My trademark is working in collaboration with musicians. I've worked with musicians since I was 16 or 17. So I am fascinated about the connection between particularly poet and musician, because there are many connections between them, and not least that as poets we're utilising forms which also have foundation within music. So the sonnet, the little song, the villanelle, the Italian work song, the ballad, all of these show a kind of through line between poet and musician. And of course, we come from cultures, wherever we are in the world, that at their genesis have orature, that this was the way that the word was disseminated. So it would have been people talking to each other, telling each other stories, somebody joining in with a musical instrument of some kind, something being sung as well as spoken. I think it's a very recent thing to compartmentalise things into neat boxes, because that just doesn't happen in cultures across the world. And I do believe that your own discipline, whatever that means, becomes stronger when you encounter other disciplines. So what does my line become when it is fused with piano, bass guitar, another person's voice? How does it change shape? And this is where we're back to jazz and improvisation and things changing in the moment. So for me, performance and writing are bound up with each other, and I believe that text, wherever we meet it, is performative. And I believe also as well, to go to a writer such as Marvin Carson, an academic, in his book called The Haunted Stage, he talks about intertextuality thus. He says that every text is haunted by another text. So in a way, there's another level of performance going on here, that when we are quoting or cross-referring to other texts, in many ways, we are reenacting aspects of those texts, so that we are not only just performing the text that is in front of you, but the layers and thus the richness of the text that you're hearing comes from its intertextuality, because it is performing other texts. That's what the writer is doing. So there are lots of different registers at work. In terms of the Haunting Commission, I've chosen to respond to Charlotte Perkins Gilman and the Yellow Wallpaper. A story of a woman who's haunted by spectres of what she wanted for her life, and how in a gendered time how does a woman pursue being her authentic creative self inside the social expectation of marriage and motherhood? How does a woman reconcile, in this case, in terms of this book, the demands of being the angel at the hearth and being the creative, emancipated woman that she wants to be? And also, what does that do to us as women if we do not pursue the creative lives that we dream and desire and that are our pregnancies, if you like, if we don't allow those creative pregnancies to be so? Who do we become? Do we become spectres in our own lives? Do we become haunted by the possibilities of what we could have created because that thing that we could have created doesn't exist because it was never given a chance to be, or we never allowed that thing to be? So I am fascinated by this book in many ways because it's considered a ghost classic, but it's not ghost in terms of perhaps a traditional idea of the dead haunting one. This is the self or selves that one could be haunting one and provoking one into becoming the self that one wants to be, so that one can be the most alive that one can be in this lifetime and not be dead before one's time. And this book encourages us to live, and it encourages us to dream and pursue, and that's very much come up within my own poetry in response to this, that the freedom and the liberty to dream, to have dreams and create something which wouldn't exist without you, is liberation, is freedom, and it is the thing that is as much a birth and as much a child as a literal child that one might birth. And for some women, it perhaps is important to make the decision in life that they can only do one of those things. So this is an extract from the poem Illumina, which was commissioned in response to the work of the brilliant ceramicist Loretta Braganza, and it's just an extract. Second, the moon, a wish of china, clay, of porcelain placed inside the universe's kiln. Her breath the breeze that cools it down as bone, ash, clouds rise, ethereal as ghosts. She smiles at giving the dark a thing by which to measure itself. 12th, with the twin disciples of her hands, their faith in clay, and the day's last hour of clear light declining fast, lit by a scarce moon, lit by stars, she begins what every other task seemed set to test, the crafting of clay as human flesh. 12 shapes in all their difference, 12 shapes choreographed from the same piece of clay, and to each tiny ear against a nightbird's score, she sings each of them the gospel of their names. A spell to wake them into breath and being, a spark for heartbeat, feeling, pulse and blood, the hope for all we are and can become, a compass for the journey, the way home.